Hello and welcome. This video will help you deepen your understanding of the power of words. Words are present from the moment we wake up till we fall asleep, and they follow us into our dreams. Yet, most of us don't think consciously about how they work or how they affect us. And yet, we give the word machines in our heads almost total authority over our decisions and perceptions. Now, hopefully, if there is one thing above all others that you take with you from this video, it is to begin noticing the invisible influence of words, how they shape the way you see yourself, others, and the world. Every word you use carries an interpretation, a direction for your attention, and often an emotional charge. They don't just describe reality, they participate in creating it. When you start to observe the words that move through your mind and the ones that pass your lips, you begin to see how much of your experience is guided by them. To think consciously about words is not simply to analyze language. It is to take back authorship of your own inner dialogue and to stop repeating what the world has taught you without question. From the Toltec point of view, words are symbols, carriers of meaning, and most importantly, agreements. An agreement is simply something we accept as true. It might be about who we think we are, how we believe the world works, or what we expect from life. We make these agreements with ourselves, with other people, and with the world around us. Words are the vehicles that carry these agreements back and forth. The moment you believe a word, it becomes part of the map you use to navigate reality. This is why the Toltecs place so much importance on the first of the four agreements, as described by Don Miguel Ruiz in the book with the same name. The agreement says, "Be impeccable with your word." Impeccable literally means without sin, but here it means without going against yourself. To go against yourself is to use your own word, whether spoken aloud or silently within your mind, in a way that weakens or contradicts who you truly are. It happens when you use words to judge yourself, to diminish your worth, or to reinforce beliefs that create guilt or shame. It also happens when you say things you don't really mean, or when you speak against others in ways that harm your own inner balance. Every time your word aligns with self-rejection instead of self-respect, you are turning that creative power inward against your own integrity. When you speak, you are planting seeds. Those seeds might grow into confidence, understanding, and connection, or they might grow into doubt, fear, and separation. To be impeccable with your word is to choose seeds that support life instead of undermining it. The power of words is most obvious when you think about the times someone has said something to you that stayed with you for years. A single comment, or your interpretation of that comment, whether loving or critical, can take root in the mind and become part of the story you tell yourself. The Toltec teachings point out that most of these stories aren't even true in the way we think they are. They're built from interpretations, judgments, and inherited beliefs that have been repeated so many times they feel real. But because they are made from words, they can also be changed with words. When you speak to yourself, you are constantly reinforcing or weakening those agreements. Think about it. The inner monologue, the one that is taking place constantly throughout most people's waking hours, is constantly telling you what you are saying yes and no to, and thus it contributes to shaping your life. And yet, most people allow it to run on autopilot while believing the stories that the voice is telling them. Because the inner voice is a storyteller. Sometimes it tells the truth, but often it mixes truth with lies, not out of malice, but because it learned from others who were also guessing at the truth. If you never question this voice, you live inside a story that may not serve you. Every time you catch yourself repeating a harmful idea about yourself or the world, you have an opportunity to introduce a new word, a new statement that shifts the agreement. This is where the fifth agreement, "Be skeptical but learn to listen," becomes important. Being skeptical doesn't mean being cynical or dismissive. It means not automatically believing every word you hear, including the ones in your own head. It means pausing before you take in a statement and asking, is this really true? Is this a reflection of reality or just someone's interpretation? When you combine this kind of listening with the practice of speaking impeccably, you create a much cleaner flow of communication, both with yourself and with others. From a Toltec perspective, reality itself is shaped through agreements held by the collective. This shared dream, the dream of the planet, is made up of countless words and symbols that humanity has agreed to use in a certain way. When enough people accept an idea as true, it becomes part of this shared dream. That means words don't just affect personal reality. They also influence the collective reality we all live in. Each time you use your word to challenge a harmful collective agreement or reinforce a beneficial one, you contribute to shaping that larger dream. Of course, the effect of words is not just mental. Words carry emotional weight. The Toltecs teach that every word functions like a spell, not in a superstitious sense, but because it shapes the emotional atmosphere between people. A single word, spoken with care or without it, can alter the course of a conversation, a relationship, or even a community. Once released, it continues to move through others, echoing far beyond the moment it was spoken. There's a reason why the word spell refers both to arranging letters and to casting magic. Words shape reality in much the same way a spell does, through focused intent and belief. Yet most of us rarely stop to consider this. We treat words as light and harmless, while history shows otherwise. Entire wars, revolutions, and betrayals have begun with words, with accusations, promises, or declarations that ignited emotion and set human events into motion. A careless remark can plant fear or resentment. A thoughtful word can dissolve tension and create trust. The emotional tone of your words matters just as much as their literal meaning. When you speak from a place of love and respect, your words carry a frequency that others can feel, even if they can't explain it. To use this consciously, start by listening to the words you habitually use. Do they tend to frame things in terms of possibility or in terms of limitation? Do they express trust or suspicion? If you notice that you often use language that limits you, you can choose to replace those patterns. This doesn't mean pretending everything is fine when it isn't. The Toltec path values honesty, but it does mean speaking in a way that opens rather than closes doors. Again, be careful that you don't confuse what your mind is telling you with objective reality. You will see a very different reality depending on what words you use and believe. People often erroneously think that it works the other way, that the words that move around inside their heads are an objective representation of reality. You are encouraged to observe how this is playing out in your own life. Even those who are fully aware of the absurdity of indiscriminately believing what their minds are telling them still fall into this trap, since so much in our day-to-day lives happens on an unconscious level. Listening is as much a part of the power of words as speaking. In many conversations, people don't truly listen. They prepare their next response while the other person is talking. The Toltec way encourages listening with openness while keeping your discernment active. You can hear someone fully without taking on their agreements as your own. And inversely, you can listen absent-mindedly while still being affected by the words you are exposed to. Often more so because you have become a passive recipient rather than an active listener. By being present, attentive, and conscious of what is being communicated, communication becomes clear, and you guard yourself against absorbing words that would plant seeds you don't want to grow. One of the most practical ways to use the Toltec understanding of words is in relationships. Most conflicts come from misunderstandings, words that were spoken with one intent, but interpreted through a different set of agreements. If you make it a practice to clarify rather than assume, you prevent a great deal of unnecessary pain. This means asking questions when you're not sure what someone meant, and being willing to explain your own meaning without defensiveness. The third agreement: "Don't make assumptions" is really about respecting the power of words to bridge or to divide. When we assume, we fill in the blanks with our own story rather than getting the real story from the other person. The moment we replace assumption with direct communication, we give words their rightful role as tools for connection rather than weapons for misunderstanding. There's also a personal discipline here. The Toltecs speak of domestication, the way we are trained from childhood to accept the agreements of those around us. Much of this domestication happens through words: praise and criticism, instructions and warnings, labels and definitions. As we grow older, these words become internalized until we police ourselves with them. We tell ourselves what we can and cannot do, what we should and should not feel, based on agreements we never consciously chose. To free ourselves, we need to become aware of this inner dialogue and use our word to rewrite it. This process doesn't happen all at once. In Toltec practice, mastery comes through repetition, not by forcing yourself to think positive thoughts, but by choosing words that reflect the reality you want to live in. It can start with simple shifts. Instead of saying, "I'm terrible at this," you might say, "I'm still learning how to do this." Instead of, "I have to," try, "I've decided to." Replace, "This always goes wrong for me," with, "I'm still figuring out how to make this work." Or change, "Why does this always happen to me?" to, "Is there any way I can improve the situation?" These are just examples, and you are encouraged to find ones that work for you and your particular life situation. They are not an encouragement toward putting on rose-colored glasses, but ways of showing that you can reframe a situation and your relationship to it through the words you use, without lying to yourself or distorting reality. These adjustments might sound small, but over time they reshape how you relate to yourself and what you believe is possible. The Toltec tradition warns against becoming attached to the words themselves rather than to what they represent. This confusion happens much more easily than most people think. Our minds have a tendency to fall for the illusion that they have understood something as soon as it has been labeled and framed linguistically. If we don't watch out for this tendency, we may start living more and more in a pale copy of reality inside our heads, one consisting mainly of empty buzzwords, slogans, and labels. If we want to have a more accurate understanding of the human experience, we need to cultivate a mindset that helps us remember that words are only symbols, tools for pointing toward meaning, and not the meaning itself. When we mistake the symbol for the truth, we lose touch with what the words were meant to convey. You can use a beautiful phrase that moves someone deeply, but if they hold on to the phrase as if the power lies in the words alone, it becomes another illusion, another agreement made without understanding. This is how spiritual teachings can turn into dogma, when people repeat powerful words but disconnect them from direct experience. To be impeccable with your word is to keep language alive, to speak in a way that reflects reality as you know it, and to ensure that your intention is clear. Much of our suffering comes from believing lies about ourselves and the world. These lies are made of words, often spoken to us in childhood and repeated internally ever since. If words can plant those lies, they can also uproot them. Speaking truth to yourself, even when it feels uncomfortable, is one of the most direct ways to break harmful agreements. This might mean saying, "That's not who I am anymore," when an old belief resurfaces, or telling yourself, "I am allowed to change my mind," when you feel trapped by a past decision. The emotional charge behind words is another key part of their power. You can speak the same sentence with love or with contempt, and the effect will be completely different. The Toltec way isn't about censoring your emotions, but about being conscious of the energy you are sending with your words. When you are aware of your own emotional state before speaking, you can decide whether to wait, to soften your tone, or to choose words that create the outcome you want. When you observe your speech, you might be shocked to discover just how much you speak in a way that runs contrary to your aims, simply because you feel the urge to speak your mind or say what you really think. This is, of course, not to say that you should not be honest or sincere. It's about pausing and asking yourself if the truth that you are about to speak is really feeding honest, open communication, or if it feeds the ego's need to assert itself and make itself right. Because words are so powerful, silence also has a role. Silence can be a way to avoid adding fuel to a misunderstanding or a way to listen more deeply. In Toltec practice, silence isn't about withholding truth, but about making space for clarity. Sometimes the most impeccable use of your word is to say nothing until you can speak with accuracy and respect. In the broader Toltec view, words are an art form. They are the brush strokes you use to paint your personal dream, the reality you experience every day. If you fill that dream with careless strokes, the picture will be chaotic and unclear. If you choose each stroke with awareness, the picture becomes a deliberate creation. You don't need to control every detail. Life will always bring the unexpected. But with mastery of your word, you can respond to the unexpected in ways that keep your dream aligned with your intent. In daily practice, this means checking in with yourself before you speak, especially in moments of stress. Ask, am I about to say something that I'll want to keep in my reality? Or am I about to plant a seed I'll regret? It also means becoming aware of the words you allow into your mind from others. You can listen with empathy without swallowing someone else's fear or anger, and you have the right to set boundaries if someone unloads negativity on you, even if you are, of course, encouraged to do so in a kind, mindful, and respectful way. When you live with this kind of awareness, you start to see that every word you speak, hear, or think is either contributing to your freedom or to your domestication. Over time, the balance shifts toward freedom. You begin to trust your own word because you know it's aligned with your intent, and you stop being overly influenced by words that are out of alignment with truth. The Toltec tradition calls this mastery of the dream. It's the point where you are no longer at the mercy of the collective agreements of the world around you. You still participate in the shared dream. We all do, but you bring your own clarity and intent to it. Your words are no longer reflexes conditioned by the past. They are conscious tools for creating the future you want to live in. In summary, the Toltec tradition teaches that words are the foundation of all human experience. They are symbols that carry meaning, form agreements, and create the personal and collective dream we call reality. Every word we speak or believe strengthens either truth or illusion, freedom or domestication. To be impeccable with your word means to speak and think in ways that support life, rather than diminish it. To use language in alignment with honesty, respect, and awareness. This includes questioning the voice in your own mind, refusing to believe lies, and communicating clearly instead of making assumptions. Words carry emotional energy and shape the atmosphere between people. A single careless remark can plant fear, while a thoughtful one can create trust and healing. By becoming conscious of the words we use, listen to, and accept, we begin to rewrite the agreements that govern our lives. Ultimately, mastery of the word is mastery of the dream. When your words align with clarity and intent, you stop being ruled by the collective stories of the world and begin to shape your own, one that reflects truth, freedom, and love. Finally, remember that every word is a spell. Each one carries the power to shape thought, emotion, and reality. When you begin to think consciously about how words work, how they affect you, how they influence others, and how they play out in your daily life, you start to see just how much of your experience is woven from language. What gives words their real power is not the sound or the symbol, but the force that drives them, intent. Every word is a channel for that energy, a way for life to direct itself through you. When your intent is clouded by fear or self-importance, your words distort and lose their strength. But when your intent is rooted in love, awareness, and respect for life, your words carry clarity. They become precise instruments that align you with truth. When you speak from that source, your words move in harmony with life itself, shaping reality without resistance, and contributing to a world that is a little clearer, calmer, and more awake. Now, before you go, if you wish to learn more about the Four Agreements or the Toltec tradition, we have a whole playlist on the subject available on the end screen right now. You've now reached the end of the video. Remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for your time.